Hello game developers, and thank you for joining me in this very special presentation. I apologize for not dressing nicer. I have this really nice shirt that my wife just got me for Christmas that I was going to wear, but if you'll notice, it's kind of the same color as our green screen background, and I would be invisible for most of the talk, which I guess I thought at first was cool, but then decided would be creepy. So you get t-shirt, Todd. But that's okay. I still respect you. And we're going to jump right into our talk here. This presentation is it's called Play Games Best Practices. This is based on a talk that I gave in November of 2013 at GDC Next that was formerly titled Play Games, What We've Learned. I have edited it somewhat, shortened it for content, and really focused more on best practices for implementing play game services, which I think hopefully you as game developers will care most about. So with that in mind, here we go. When we talk about play games, what I'm really here to talk about today is two aspects of play games. First would be the set of mobile gaming services that we launched at Google I/O. These include features like achievements, leaderboards, cloud save, and multiplayer. This also includes the Play Games standalone application. If you've tuned into this presentation because you're hoping to hear like the 5 ways to hack the Google Play Store to get onto the top most recent list, this is not that talk and you're going to be somewhat disappointed. Just to give you a little history of these services, Play Games launched at Google I/O of 2013, which means they are about 8 months old as of maybe next week. We started with about 24 games at launch. I think at this point we have well over 2,000 games that have integrated game services. And these games are available both on iOS. Here you can see some achievements on the iOS version of Stickman Gun Fu, I believe, and on Android. And here we can see some lovely achievements for Triple Town, one of my favorite games. The Play Games app has launched the standalone app in July of 2013, which means it's about 6 months old as of this recording. So happy half birthday, Play Games standalone app. I don't have official numbers to share with you right now, but if you go to the Play Store and you look at the application, you'll see it's in the 10 to 50 million installs category. So hopefully that will give you a rough idea of the number of people who have this thing installed, with a margin of error of plus or minus 20 million, I guess. The point of all these stats, by the way, is not to cheerlead and not say, oh, wow, look how great we are. It's really just to show you that at this point, we feel like we have enough information from all the people using the Play Games app, from all the developers that have implemented game services, that we feel like some patterns have emerged, some very sexy patterns. And we feel like we now have enough information to give you some best practices to kind of improve your games and make them the best that they can be using our platform. So with that, let's start by talking about sign-in. So this is a tale of 2 sign-in flows, one which eventually leads to a revolution, but hopefully without the muskets and the bloodshed and the decapitation. So we're going to start by taking you through the officially sanctioned sign-in flow as implemented by Riptide2 GP by our friends over at Vector Unit. So this is the initial screen that you might see if you were to start the game. There's a little sign-in button there on the left. But maybe I choose to ignore that and I say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to kind of click on my player profile. We click on that, we get into another screen. The sign-in button's still there. But maybe I say, you know what, I'm going to go and click on this achievements button and see what my achievements are. Well, at this point, a dialog box pops up that says, hey, would you like to sign in to Play Games because we use that to track your achievements? I say, okay, yeah, that sounds good. An OAuth 2 dialog permission screen pops up that I look at and I say, oh, okay, this makes sense. I understand why the game's asking me for these permissions. It just said, hey, do you want to sign in to track your achievements? And so I say, this looks good. I hit sign in. I get back into the application. I now see that it has been personalized. Over on the upper right there, you can see my name, or most of my name. And the sign in button has now turned into a sign out button. All in all, this has been sort of a generally kind of friendly flow. I understood at every step of the way what's been going on. It's kind of the warm fuzzy puppy dog of sign-in flows. So that's nice. Now let's take a look at a not so recommended flow. This, I didn't want to call out any particular partner, so this is my lovely made-up game of Eschaton. The game starts up and, maybe it kind of loads. And before I even get into the game, before I get into a main menu or anything like that, I'm shown this permissions dialog. And at this point, I don't quite know, why is it showing me this? Why is it asking me to sign in? I don't really understand. And this, it's a little scary, it's a little frightening, and I want my mommy. So here's our quiz for you. Which sign-in flow do you think did better? The warm, fuzzy puppy dog flow, or the scary I want my mommy flow? Go raise your hand. I know this is on YouTube, and maybe you're at the office, but put your hand up behind your head as if you were kind of scratching or something. Raise your hand if you said warm puppy dog flow. Okay, that's a fair number of you. Raise your hand if you think scary I want my mommy flow did better. All right, that's some of you. Well, if you thought that the warm puppy dog flow, converted better, you would be incorrect. The scary I want my mommy flow actually converted significantly better than sort of our officially recommended flow. And this is a bit of a dilemma, particularly for you guys as game developers, right? Like, why be good? Why try and do the right thing when you get much better conversion by doing the thing we don't recommend? And this is kind of your traditional like prisoner's dilemma, tragedy of the commons, stuff you probably learned about in Economics 101 kind of thing. And so we looked at this, and the way we saw it, there were sort of two ways we could resolve this situation. One would be simply enforcement. We could say, hey, this sign-in flow goes against our best practices, and if you don't fix it, we're going to ban you from the store and send our robot army after you and say bad things about you behind your back. But the thing is, this isn't really our style. We, don't like to use the ban hammer if we don't have to, and the robot army is still in beta. That joke was a little funnier and more outlandish before we went and bought all those robot companies. Now, I don't know, a little close to home. Anyway, option number two is, hey, maybe we should take this scary and jarring flow and just make it a little less scary and jarring. So we're doing two things. First, we are changing our policy to explicitly allow and even encourage this type of sign-in flow. However, along with that, rolling out to Android devices like now, by the time you see this video, we're adding a nice little animation that's going to let the user know what's about to happen right before they sign in. So here's our example again. Here's our game of Eschaton, and the game starts up, and I see the loading bar. And now this time, look at that. We got this nice little animation saying, hey, we're about to sign you into Play Game Services, right? This is nice. I have a lot more context now as to why the game is giving me this permissions dialog. In fact, in some ways, I actually think this is a lot better. With the sign in button, you didn't actually know necessarily what you were signing in for, right? Like, was it just to share posts on Google+? Was it to remember who I am? There was nothing about that button that suggested, oh yeah, this is for achievements and leaderboards. So with this intro animation, the user suddenly has a lot more context, and they understand now what they're being asked when they get this permissions dialog. So I think it's kind of a win-win all around. Like, your users understand what's going on a lot better, and you as developers hopefully get some better sign-in conversion. So all in all, we think this is a good change. With that, let's move on to achievements. So the first point I want to make about achievements is achievements do matter. I feel like at some point, all of us as game developers, game designers, we all got really cynical about achievements. We're too cool for them now. I don't entirely know why this is. My theory is maybe, we got tired of like all these guys in suits coming in and saying things like, hey, I'm going to add gamification to cooking, and getting a ton of VC funding. Which actually is not a bad idea. If any of you would like to join my gamification cooking startup, talk to me after this video. But my point is that achievements do matter. Maybe not to all of your players, but definitely to some of them, most likely your hardcore players, right? The players that are actually going to be spending most of their money in your application. And so my first recommendation when it comes to achievements is, don't phone it in. I know as developers, you can spend hundreds of hours play testing and balancing all of your gameplay, but then don't kind of whip together the achievements in the last 4 minutes before you ship, right? Don't do that. Think about these achievements when you're sort of first designing your game. Think about what achievements would be fun. So the number one trick I have to designing good mobile achievements is simply design good achievements. We sort of went out onto the internet and looked at some of the advice that was out there about kind of good achievement design, and we kind of felt like 90% of that advice still stands. If you haven't designed achievements before, if you're looking for sort of where to start, there's a really good article on Gamma Sutra called Achievement Design 101 by Greg McClanahan. I believe he was the community manager on Congregate for quite a number of years. He designed a lot of their achievements in the first few years of their service. He wrote this very good article. I encourage you to check it out. I'm not going to repeat all of that advice here because that would be redundant, but here's one example that I really like. Let's say that there's this amazing once in a blue moon moment that happens in your game that's awesome, right? Somehow your playtester manages to make this amazing, crazy thing happen in your game that you're like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. We have to reward our players if they can pull off that same maneuver, right? And so you add this achievement. You say, hey, here's this achievement, pull off this crazy once in a lifetime maneuver. And for your players who, as they're playing their game, happen to pull off this crazy once in a blue moon kind of maneuver, it is kind of nice to get an achievement that recognizes, hey, that thing you did was really awesome and we'd like to reward you for it, right? However, the problem is the rest of your players, there's going to be a lot of them that are going to try and earn all of your achievements in your game. And so what's going to happen is they're going to play this level, try and pull off this once in a lifetime maneuver, fail, quit, restart your level, try again, try and pull off this crazy maneuver, fail, quit, restart, and restart, and restart, and restart, until, after a few hundred, repeats of gameplay, they can finally pull off this crazy once in a blue moon type of maneuver. And when that happens, the reaction is not going to be, oh my God, that was awesome. The reaction is going to be, I am so glad to be done with this stupid thing. And by the way, I hate you, your game, and everything your game stands for. What I do recommend, by the way, is if your game does have moments like this that you want to show off, consider capturing replay and uploading it to someplace like YouTube, right? I mean, gameplay is the second most popular category on YouTube after music. People love, watching other people play games. And if you're able to, it's not trivial, but if you're able to kind of keep a running total of, or a running record of your game's logic over the last few minutes, kind of be able to rewind, record that out to a buffer, upload that video then onto YouTube and allow players to share it, all of a sudden there's an opportunity now for your game to be exposed to, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who might not have otherwise seen or noticed your game. So, if you do want to reward a player for this kind of moment, look into being able to share replays on a video sharing site instead of looking at an achievement. A good mobile achievement should serve as a guideline for your players that there is still more for them to do. I think this holds particularly true in mobile games because, in general, console games still tends to have more of the stronger single-player narrative experiences. No one is playing BioShock and they get to this moment here where Elizabeth clocks them with a book and says, well, I guess I'm done. Put down the controller. Let me find something else to play. Right? This doesn't happen because there's very clearly something in the narrative that is dragging the player forward, that is letting them know, no, there's definitely more for you to do here in this game. By contrast, let's look at a game like Plague Inc. Right? By the time I'm done playing this game and maybe I've infected the world, am I done? Is there more for me to do in this game? Maybe I can play on a harder difficulty level, but maybe I also think that I've seen everything there is to see in this game and I uninstall it. Right? I think this is an example where Plague Inc. in particular did a really good job with their achievements. If you look at their list of achievements, you can see that there's a lot of depth to this game that a player who's only playing it, the first or second time around might not realize. You look at some of the achievements on this list and it's like, you can cause World War III to break out, or you can infect astronauts before they go to the moon and all of a sudden you can infect space, or you can cause a zombie outbreak to happen. This is all stuff that I as a player might not realize if I were to just casually play this game. Now all of a sudden I see this stuff, I'm compelled to try and pull off more of these, goals here. And I suddenly discovered there's a much deeper aspect to this game than I might have otherwise realized. So, you know, if your game has these kind of elements, if your game has a layer of depth that you want to make sure your players know about, use an achievement to kind of guide them there. When it comes to mobile achievements, do remember that you're on a mobile device and users can be interrupted at any moment. Watch out for achievements that require your user to do something in one sitting, or watch out for, hey, do this thing in under 60 seconds. At the very least, make sure that you're pausing your achievement timer if your game has to go into the background or your user suddenly receives a phone call. This is not a major issue I've seen with most mobile developers. They kind of understand the context of mobile games. But if you are porting your game over from another platform, if you're porting it over from a console, look at your achievements, make sure they still stand up in this kind of environment. And don't forget that your game is expanding. Don't forget to add new achievements when you add new content. Maybe it seems obvious, but I've seen some developers miss this, right? You've got 3 worlds in your game, and your game goes out there, and it turns out it's a massive hit. And you're like, whoa, we gotta keep adding stuff to this game so that players keep playing it and keep talking about it and keep buying in-game items and all of that. And so you go ahead and you add more levels to your game. Well, remember, achievements serve as a guidepost to your player that there's still more for them to do. And so add in some achievements to accompany this extra content. And finally, watch out for what I call the achievement avalanche. I have seen a lot of games do this. Let's say we've got ourselves a little puzzle game, and we decide, all right, well, we'll add some achievements for completing various levels along the way, right? This is fine, totally standard, it works. And then we say, we should also add some kind of challenge type of achievements, like, can you finish a game or finish a level in under 3 minutes? And can you finish a level without dying or without using an undo? Right? This seems all like a really good idea, right? It seems like we've sort of got a nice mix of progress achievements and challenge type achievements. But who can see the problem here? Raise your hand. Okay, a couple of you. I see you out there in YouTube land. Here's the issue, right? I play the game and I complete level 1, yay, and I get an achievement for it. The kicker is level 1 was probably the easiest level in the entire game. And so there's a very good chance that not only have I completed level 1, but I've now completed a level without dying, without using any undos, in under 3 minutes, and I've gotten a 3-star score. And blammo, sort of before I've gotten a chance as a player to get vested at all in your game, all the interesting achievements are gone, right? These are all used up. And maybe it's kind of nice having that moment after the first level where I get 5 achievements, but I'm not invested enough in your game yet at this point to care. And then there's not much left to kind of keep me interested after that. So watch out for these types of achievements. If it seems like there's a good chance you'll give away half your achievements in the first level, find other ways to reward those same types of achievements. So with that, let's get into leaderboards. And here, the best piece of advice I can give you is keep your leaderboards clean. Leaderboards can be a fantastic way to build a community around your game, right? People start to compete. They, decide to check out the weekly leaderboard and see how they're doing, and they, come back and make sure they're still somewhere in the top of their weekly leaderboard or their social leaderboard among their friends. If you have a good leaderboard system going, it can be, inexpensive and really easy retention for your game. So imagine how disheartening it can be for one of your top players if they get a score that they think has got to make the top 5 all-time scores. They check out their leaderboard and they see this. Oh, look, the top player here has max int. Well, that can be really disheartening. And this happens enough times, players sort of get disillusioned and they no longer care about your leaderboards. And the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, leaderboard data generated by your game client is never going to be completely trustworthy. But there are things you can do to help mitigate this. First, kind of quick and easy solution, set limits. Not all games have a theoretical maximum, but if you do, add those into the leaderboards, right? Make sure the leaderboard rejects any score that is theoretically impossible. At the very least, it just kind of makes them look better. This can help, but obviously not all games have theoretical limits. Maybe yours doesn't. So the other option I would encourage you to look at is players.hide. This is a REST call. This is one of our management calls that hides any player from the public leaderboard. This can also be kind of sneaky in that it hides the player from everybody but him or herself. So the cheating player doesn't actually know that they've been hidden unless they were to find a friend playing the same game, and ask their friend to go and check the highest score list and look for them, and then they find out that they've been hidden. And maybe if they're a cheater, they don't have any friends. So I would encourage you to look at players.hide to hide any players that very obviously don't have legitimate scores. The REST call is out there. It's well documented. The actual documentation is not in perspective like this. It's just normal readable. We also have a sample application that you can download that will make it easier for you to make these calls. It's called, I believe, Management Tools, and it's available from our GitHub page. So drop on by our GitHub page, check it out. And then finally, we just recently added score tags. And this is a string of up to 64 URI-safe characters that you can submit along with your score when they get sent to our servers. And this can be used in a number of different ways. Some of it might just be, for analytics information. You're curious, what level a player was on when they submitted this amazing score. But you can also use it for things like adding a hash, right? You can kind of, make some hash of the user's score as sort of a way to verify that their score actually seems somewhat legitimate. Or, if your game server happens to be the ultimate recorder of truth, add a link to an entry on your server that confirms that, yes, this score that this player submitted is legitimate. It's what the server thinks it is. And you can kind of start to combine this with the players.hide call that we had in the previous slide to make your own custom anti-cheating script, right? So you can make a script that makes this scores.list call, gets a whole bunch of these scores, and starts analyzing them, going through each one and saying, all right, looking at this score and the score tag that's with it, does this seem legitimate? And if it doesn't, call players.hide. Hide that player, go back and go through your next score. And if you start running this kind of script on a regular basis, you can start to get really efficient with your leaderboard cleaning. You can get your ConOps person, your customer support person to kind of run this once or twice a day, and suddenly you have some leaderboards that once again look legitimate and can kind of bring on that type of retention you get with a good leaderboard system. And so with this, we're going to move on to multiplayer. And I should probably make it clear here that what we're really talking about right now is real-time multiplayer. Turn-based multiplayer has just been announced and launched within a day or two of this video. We don't have enough information yet to give you best practices. But when it comes to real-time multiplayer, the biggest thing we learned is matchmaking is really hard. So be glad you don't have to do it. Here's what we discovered. So in a traditional client-server setup, you've got your desktop computer, and it's going out and pinging a list of known servers out there in the world, and finds the one that seems to have the best ping time and suggests, hey, maybe this is the server you want to join. And that works fine in a client-server setup. However, with real-time games using game services, we're using a peer-to-peer network, and you can't ping every other phone in the world. Partly because there is a lot of them, partly because they're just not really set up that way. The only way to really know about another client is to connect with them. And at that point, it's kind of too late if it turns out it's a bad connection and maybe you didn't want to connect with them. You kind of have to ride it out at that point. However, we can start to learn. So, for instance, we might discover that a number of devices, maybe it seems like they're in the same general area geographically and therefore are likely to connect well with each other. We can get more sophisticated than that too. Like we might learn about different connections among different devices, in different locations. And by the way, all this kind of example, completely hypothetical. But let's say we learn that devices in, say, the Seattle area and devices in Boise, Idaho have a really good connection, right? Not sure why, they just do. And maybe we also learn that, again, all hypothetical, maybe connections between Seattle and Portland, they're all getting routed through Baltimore for some reason. And so they're not as good. And so maybe we'll start to avoid trying to connect these two devices if we can. And we can start taking this vast amount of information that we're getting and use that to more intelligently match up players. So we've got this situation where a player is looking for opponents to play with. We start off a little picky. a player pops up that we know isn't a good connection, we might say, you know what, let's not connect with them right away. Let's see if there's maybe some other players that would be better for us to play a game with. So, some time goes on and we find a player that, we think, yeah, we'll connect well with them. Maybe another opponent pops up and we say, yeah, they would be a good opponent. It's only after some time goes on and, we haven't found anybody else better, then we will kind of lower our standards and pick a player with a not as good connection. And you might be asking yourselves, why are we doing this? Why don't we just kind of wait for somebody better to come along? Why even make this connection in the first place? Well, here's the big metric, 12 seconds. This is the amount of time at which players will start to abandon your game. They'll start to get impatient and say, I didn't want to play this game after all. So we want to do our best to match up the majority of our players before we hit that point, based on the idea that any game is better than an abandoned game. And so the first piece of advice I can give you is that if you want a really successful multiplayer game, you should start by having a very successful multiplayer game. You want a game with millions of people all playing it at all times. The idea being that if there are millions of users out there all looking to play, we have a very rich pool from which we can pull really good multiplayer candidates, which I know is not very actionable advice. You're probably already trying to make a successful multiplayer game. So let's look at maybe a more practical recommendation, which is keep variance to a minimum. We have this feature that is very powerful, where we let you select what type of multiplayer game you want to join before you even start connecting. Whoops. So for instance, you might decide, hey, I'm going to add a variant where people can decide before they play, do I want to play a game of capture the flag, or do I want to play a game of, team deathmatch or conquest? And players will only get matched up with other players looking to play the same type of game as them. Again, powerful feature, right? But there's a downside to it. Let's say we have this full complement of users, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to add a variant. I want to, let players decide whether they're going to play deathmatch or capture the flag. Well, just by doing that, you've divided this pool of potential players in half. And then you say to yourself, oh, well, I also want to have a variant for whether friendly fire is turned on or off. And we should probably let players decide if they want to play a 3, 5, or 7-minute game. Oh, and you know what? Of course we want a newbies only room so that beginning players don't feel overwhelmed when they first start the game. Well, now all of a sudden, we've got nobody around that wants to play the same newbies only 7-minute friendly fire on capture the flag game as our initial player who's looking for opponents, and maybe we don't find anybody for them to match with, and they end up abandoning the game, and that's sad for all of us. So how do we fix this? My recommendation would be that if you think all of these options that you have variants for, if you think they're all nice but not deal breakers, like if you think players wouldn't mind playing a friendly fire game even if they prefer it off, then create auto matching with no variants, or as few variants as possible, right? That will bring up as many potential candidates for us to match up your players with. Then, once your players have joined and we find people that seem to have good network connections for each other, then bring up a UI that lets players vote on what type of game they want to play. Not everyone's going to get what they voted for. Majority is going to rule here. But if you think these options are all sort of nice to haves and not deal breakers, leave them as something players can vote on after they've been matched up. So let's move on to another aspect of multiplayer games, and that's invitations. So we have this system, we have a bunch of built-in UI that allows your player to invite specific friends to play with them. But here's one thing we discovered, and again, real-time multiplayer only. The vast majority of people don't send out invitations to friends unless they are all in the same room already. Or I guess in this case, the same park where they are all dressed formally, because it's one of those formal parks. And the reason is, when you send off an invitation to a friend, you don't know what their situation is, right? I mean, are they sitting at home watching TV and happy to be interrupted? Are they sitting at the movies and don't want to get your game invite? Are they playing a game on their phone already and happy to receive other invitations? Are they taking a serious phone call and don't want to get interrupted? Your inviting player doesn't know. you don't know as a developer, and frankly, neither do we. From a technical perspective, I have my phone in my pocket and I'm bored versus I have my phone in my pocket and I don't want to be interrupted, looks very much the same. And remember, you only have 12 seconds for this other person to take the phone out of their pocket, see the invite, make a decision as to whether they want to join this game or not, before your original player gets impatient. And so what we've discovered is, the vast majority of your games, like 95% of your games, are using auto match. This is the flow where basically I say, I don't care who I get matched up with, just match me up with an opponent as soon as possible. And so you should do your best to encourage this type of flow in a real-time multiplayer game. And so that means, start by adding a quick match button. This should be a button that's sort of one click, zero dialogues to get into a multiplayer game. And while you're at it, make this button the obvious default. Have the invite friends button there. Some people, if they are gathered in the same room as their friends, will want to play a multiplayer game with them. But make the quick match the easy to find default. This would be the code for doing it. I'm not going to go over this too much because this is all available in our sample documentation. So check that out. And so with that, let's move into our lightning round. A few other little best practices that I wanted to talk about. First, use diverse icons for your achievements and leaderboards. So let's go back to our Play Games app. Remember I said it had 10 to 50 million installs? I want to point out these are voluntary installs. These are people, this doesn't count the app being preloaded on devices, which it also is for some devices. This is people that have gone to the Play Store, found the Play Games app, and said, yes, I want to download this thing. So you've got some hardcore game players that are using the Play Games app. And you're going to start to get a not insignificant number of installs that come from this application. So you want to make sure that your app is well represented in here. And there are three things when people say, I want to see what games my friends are playing. I want to see what games are recommended in the Play Games app. They're going to bring up this entry about your game, and there's three things they're going to see. First is going to be your game's description. Next is going to be a list of achievements in your game. And the third is going to be your list of leaderboards. And what we recommend here is you want to use some really nice diverse icons here so that your game displays well in this type of situation. So if we take a look at Tripletown here, they've got a pretty good set of icons. They're different, they're kind of cute, they're fun, they're within the style of the game. They look fun. They might make me say, hey, this game kind of looks like fun. Maybe I will check it out. Don't be this guy. Sorry, Nostalgic Racer, I'm going to pick on you. Notice how all the achievement icons are just the same version of their game icon that's repeated right there on the upper left. Right? This looks a lot less interesting, I think, to a potential player. Just visually, it doesn't have that same kind of oomph. And for crying out loud, don't do what this developer did. And just put a bunch of secret achievements, right? Like no one looks at that and says, oh man, I can't wait to try out this game with a few achievements that I don't know what they are, right? Secret achievements really should only be used if you've got spoilers in your game and you don't want players to find out about them. Otherwise, this does nothing to draw a player in. Remember, this is kind of your game's representation in the Play Games app. You've probably spent 40 iterations tweaking your game's icon to make sure it looks good in the Play Store. Don't then kind of ignore your game's representation in the Play Games app. And by the way, all this advice goes double for leaderboards because leaderboards are always going to show up. One, they're always going to show up in color because unlike achievements, leaderboards are always earned. And I think developers often overlook this because they forget that leaderboard icons can also be displayed to the user. Check your alerts in the Google Play Developer Console, also known as mistakes your game is probably making. There are a few situations where your game is probably running into trouble and you as a developer won't realize it. One of the most common ones is if you were to add a new achievement or a new leaderboard to your game and you forget to publish that leaderboard within the developer console. You get a warning that looks a little like this. And admittedly, this is a very weird, tricky scenario. The idea is, let's say you add a new high score list to your game. There's two things you need to publish. First, you need to publish your client that attempts to submit scores to this new leaderboard. But you also need to publish the leaderboard itself within the game service. And that's what you would do through the Play Games developer console. And so what will happen is if you only remember to publish the client, a bunch of your players, they'll get this new client. It will attempt to submit the player's high score to this leaderboard. And the Play Game service will say, wait a minute, I don't know this leaderboard. It's, this is a leaderboard that hasn't been published. I'm going to reject this call. And your player scores will get discarded. What even makes this trickier is that you as a developer probably don't see this error, because with any developer or test accounts, those can submit scores to leaderboards that are not published. So your players will complain, hey, I can't seem to earn this achievement, or I can't seem to get this leaderboard. You're going to try it out and you're going to say, I don't understand. It works fine for me. Yes, this is the little publishing screen that you have to remember to visit as well. And so really kind of one of the best ways for you to find out about these types of situations is to look for any alerts that you might get. Get in the habit of visiting your developer console, on a weekly basis, and just make sure there's no alerts that are popping up there. Another best practice, I implore you to use Cloud Save. I think Cloud Save was probably better received than what some of the folks in the team had anticipated. And kind of if you think about it, it's really basic compared to a lot of the other cloud services that we provide at Google, right? All it is just a system that lets developers, save and load information in the cloud, and that's kind of it. But it turns out a basic and simple cloud save solution is really all a lot of developers really need. And if you think about it, this makes sense. This covers a lot of the most problematic cases that players run into. The biggest being the, hey, I just got a new device, and this game that I've been playing for the last 4 months, and I'm up at level 30. I've installed it on my new device, and oh my God, here I am at level 1 again, and I really don't want to have to go and unlock those same 30 levels. Maybe I'll go find something else to play. Right? I mean, developers tell us that they see a drop-off in gameplay when a user upgrades their device. And I am quite sure that this is one of the main reasons why. No one wants to go and unlock those same 60 beginning levels again just to get to where they were last time. This also, by the way, helps deal with the, hey, I just uninstalled and reinstalled my game, and oh my God, what happened to all my game data? Is that gone too? Forget it. I don't want to play this game anymore. Right? I mean, that could be amazingly disheartening if you suddenly find that all your progress is lost because you either reinstalled the game or because you switched devices. So, please look at using Cloud Save if you can. For crying out loud, you don't even have to use our service. Use some kind of Cloud Save service. But, ours is pretty good. So let's review. First, use the new sign-in flow. This nice intro animation should be out to all Android devices now. So just send people right into the OAuth dialog. It'll be a much better experience for them. Achievements do matter, but only if you do them right. Watch out for some of the most common traps. Keep your leaderboards clean. Get a script to do it if you can. You're going to have enough people playing that I think automating the process is kind of the right solution here. Watch out for multiplayer variants. They can divide your player pool to a point where you don't have enough good players to match your players with. And again, if you're playing a real-time multiplayer game, add a quick match button. Get people into a game as fast as they can. So that's it. Thank you very much for sitting through the whole presentation. Wow, good for you. If you have any comments, any questions, go ahead and add them in the comments right below here. I do read them, and sometimes I even respond to them. And go ahead and follow me on G+, where I'm right there. That's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.